Hello, everyone. Welcome in. I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to get settled in here before we do get started. But welcome in. We'll be starting in about 2 minutes or so. So if you want to go grab a glass of water, you still have about a minute or so to take care of that. Just for some housekeeping things, this presentation is being recorded and it will be available within a couple of days. We just need to kind of reformat it and we'll send it out to everyone that signed up for this presentation. Couple other housekeeping items. We are going to be opening up for Q&A at the end. So that Q&A button at the bottom within the Zoom screen, you can type in any questions and we'll be able to address those questions. We're going to get started in about a minute or so. So just a little bit more and we'll go ahead and kick it off. Awesome. Seeing a really good turnout here and the number's not slowing down. It keeps growing. That's awesome to see.
Welcome, everyone. This is great.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's, these workflow webinars are always one of my favorites. Ones that I look forward to. Workflows are a huge part of what I do. All right, awesome. I think we're good to go ahead and kind of kick it off into our slide deck just to kind of introduce ourselves and take a look at today's topic. So hello, everyone. My name is Chris Kapansky, and thanks for joining us today for our workflow webinar. Today, we are joined by Asset-Map to cover a brand new workflow that is now available called the onboarding and advice delivery workflow. And we'll learn a little bit more about that here in a little bit. But let's take a look at today's presenters. So today's presenters will be myself representing Wealthbox as a senior product specialist. I've been here at Wealthbox for close to 8 years now. In that time, working with a lot of different types of firms on how to get the most out of Wealthbox, with a large focus really being on workflows. And today I'm calling in from the beautiful Poughkeepsie, New York. But we're also joined by Allison Susko, who is the VP of Community over at Asset-Map. But Allison, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We love working with our Wealthbox partners and super excited to do this webinar today. I am, almost 6 years in at Asset-Map, so I'm kind of an industry lifer. I've been at eMoney in the past, Occupace in the past, and again, Asset-Map for over 5 years now. Really working with a lot of our partners like Wealthbox, our broker-dealer and RIA partners. And even as I talk to you today, I'm at a conference. So I'm out at the Orion Ascent Conference. Just saw the Wealthbox folks down at their kiosk as well. So calling in from sunny San Diego today, but thrilled to be here and excited to get this started.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. So let's take a look at today's agenda. So we're going to start off with discussing a couple of different things. First, we'll cover what a workflow actually is. Then we're actually going to take a look and talk a little bit about what the difference is between a workflow and a task. Those are commonly kind of talked about side by side. Then we're going to take a look at where we can find our library of workflows besides the one that was built by the Asset-Map team and by Allison specifically. We're going to talk about some of the others and where we can find all of those, and of course, how to customize them, how to actually take it, modify it, save it as your own. After that, I will, of course, hand it off to Allison to talk to us a little bit more about Asset-Map, what Asset-Map is, as well as that new workflow. That's where we'll learn a bit more about that workflow, and it is already available to all Wealthbox users as a template. And we'll talk about kind of where you could find that. And something that I already mentioned before, but towards the end, we will, of course, open up for a Q&A session. So if anyone does have any questions throughout the presentations, feel free to click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. You could type in your questions for Allison and myself. We'll be able to address those for you. So let's actually jump into the topics at hand. What is a workflow? And a workflow really is a templated process. Anything that you find yourself repeating, whether it's an onboarding process or an inbound request to move some money, you're always following those same steps. So a workflow will allow you to stay on top of that. Make sure that the ball is not dropped. Make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. That's essentially what a workflow does. Now, how does that differentiate from a task. I usually just create a task for that when that request comes in. So a workflow is a multi-step process. You hit start on the workflow, and Wealthbox will know what happens after you complete that first part. Not only will it know what happens and it will tell you what happens, it'll also hand it off to the next appropriate person. It'll notify them, hey, you're up to bat. Here's your due date. Here's what you need to take care of. So it truly holds your hand from A to Z. Meanwhile, a task is a one-off reminder. Now, of course, we can create templates for tasks, so we can have that already pre-built, but it's a one and done. You have that pop up, you complete it, and if it's repeating, it reappears at a certain time. But once it's done, it's done. It's something that you can create as you go, as you receive that phone call. But anything involving a process, that is exactly what a workflow is for. So now let's actually take a look at where we can find that library of workflow templates right now. So when you head over to wealthbox.com, of course, you can log into your account. Once you are logged in, you would head over to the workflows section in Wealthbox. Once we're here, this is where we'll find any active workflows. If you haven't been using any, this will be blank, but you can go into manage templates at the top right. And from here, we'll be able to click into this drop down at the top left, and we'll find not only the asset map option, which we will take a closer look at in a little bit here, but we also have the Wealthbox library. This is 10 pre-built basic workflows that we find a lot of firms using that you can check out for inspiration, or you can duplicate it. And that's exactly how we could do that. From this page, we could go ahead and click on duplicate, and that'll take us into basically an edit page, as if you were creating your own workflow template from scratch, but everything is already pre-filled. A lot of the functionality that workflows really rely on will be here. For instance, this workflow uses our outcomes. We can add more steps, we can remove them, we can modify them, add descriptions, or even just change it based on your existing process. Then, of course, once you save it, it is now your own workflow, and you could start it whenever you'd like. So it's that easy to actually customize that workflow within Wealthbox. It's also super simple to create your own workflows from scratch, and there's a ton of resources available on where to get started. But the focus of today is these templates, and specifically the template that was built by Allison and her team over at Asset-Map. So Allison, I'll now hand it off to you to introduce us to Asset-Map and show us this workflow a little bit more.
Great. And I will say that I was able to really, without a whole lot of prepping, I was able to really jump in and build a workflow. I mean, it is so user friendly. I have a bit of a training background, so maybe that helped. But I have to give a shout out to the Wealthbox team, because I was able to really get in there and get it built without really much training. So really super
Awesome.
user friendly and fun to build, and I think very valuable. So definitely well done, Chris and team. I want to take a couple minutes to Chris's point, and I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on kind of all the features and functionality of Asset-Map. We have a great team that would be more than happy to show you around. But as a bit of background, we've been out in the industry for about 10 years, working with financial advisors who are really helping meet with their clients, work with their clients, do some planning for their clients, but focusing really on visualization. So getting folks to really kind of understand their financial picture by getting it all into a really clear, easy to understand map of their entire household's family finances, whether it be client and spouse, of course, the children, really anybody who matters to that family financially can be listed out on the map. And it's facilitating discussions, really good decision making, because it's just really something that clients resonate with. And part of that is prospecting, turning prospects into clients, and getting to know them and being prepared for a really, really valuable, even first meeting when you might not know a whole lot about somebody. The Asset Map experience that we're going to talk about today, that onboarding experience, is allowing advisors to really kind of hit the ground running and have valuable meetings right off the bat, instead of kind of taking those first two or three and doing that kind of relationship building, of course, that's so important, and asking for things like statements that can be very overwhelming in that process for clients. So we're trying to make it client friendly and allow the advisor and client to start that great relationship building right from the start in that first meeting. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about that today throughout the workflow. So you'll see over on the left-hand side, this is called the Asset Map Discovery feature. So You can even, if you want to, you can check out that QR code for yourself. It's a test environment. You could click on it and see actually what that experience would look like for fact finding with your clients, for yourself. So you can kind of, see exactly how client friendly it really is and how easy it is for them to give you as much or little information they feel comfortable with leading up to that meeting. Again, facilitating that really great conversation right from the start. So you could check that out for yourself if you'd like to. And, really what it's going to do is walk them through creating an asset map for the first time. And this GIF will kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. So they're going to get a link. It's super, super simple. You have, as the advisor, as the subscriber of Asset Map, a customized link that's dedicated just to you, that when your client clicks on it and fills it out, it's going to actually build that asset map for you getting started. And from there, you can do so much with it. But it's meant to be, like I said, client friendly. You can see, welcome, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Who are the important people in your life? And tell us a little bit about what you've got going on. Things like, you can imagine what a client's thinking, maybe them, their spouse, the spouse, the client, and, their oldest child who's potentially, their beneficiary is, having a conversation about finances. They could sit around the dining room table and create that asset map report leading up to the meeting with, and again, whatever they're comfortable with. But, typically it's things like, well, yeah, we each have an income and we own a house and there's, a mortgage attached to it. And we have a couple of investments, certainly 401ks and things like checking accounts. And what that does is it builds that map for you. And you get insight into that as the financial professional before they even come into the meeting. Super, super powerful stuff. It's giving you ideas of things that you can talk about in that first meeting and ongoing. So this is just some visuals in this GIF that, show what the client experience would look like. We even throw some confetti at them at the end and say, congratulations, nice job, to let them know that they were able to give you some really great insight into what's important to them. And again, at that point, it builds what you see here. And it's not going to be a fully built out asset map. There are so many things that you can do after the client gives you insight into their financial life. Things like a Wealthbox integration to really clean up some of that data, working with them in the meeting, aspect, interaction, interview, talking about what, you might have. And then as you start working with them and continue working with them and potentially have some investments or life insurance policies that you manage, there are ways to get that in there as well. So what we're talking about today is really that starting point, that onboarding of the new client or prospect, again, to really just kind of kick that relationship off in a super positive way. Before we jump into the Wealthbox workflow, I also wanted to share, this is really cool. The gentleman here, Malcolm Etheridge, is an Asset Map subscriber. We did a case study with him, about 2 years ago. And he uses our discovery process, that onboarding process, with every single client that he has. As he gets someone loaded up into Asset Map, he finds it so valuable to, again, get their perspective, find out what's important to them, and of course they're actually doing some of the data entry for him, which is nice as well. But he'll even go to the steps of, he has the Asset Map discovery link loaded into his Calendly. He has kind of his own workflow, for no pun intended, to get that onboarding super, super seamless. And if they're not willing to kind of take those steps and do, again, as much or as little as they want, as far as sharing, he thinks, they might not even be a great relationship fit, because he wants to make sure that the folks he's working with are super bought into his process as well. So it's pretty cool to see the results that our, advisor subscribers are getting by getting this super great fact finder out to their clients and prospects. So without further ado, let's kick off and talk about the Asset Map workflow that we have gotten loaded into Wealthbox. And I know the team made it available even today, so I think it's off and running, if I'm correct, right, Chris?
That's right. Yeah, it's already live.
That's great. So I'm going to show you what we built. Chris is going to jump in as necessary and give some best practices around, just workflows in general in Wealthbox, because he's certainly the expert on that. But as he had mentioned earlier, we have the onboarding and advice delivery workflow that is now part of your templates. So if I go in and I click edit, and like I said, building this was a breeze. I know that we certainly have these templates ready for you to use if you are either interested in Asset-Map or a joint subscriber already. And then, of course, you can, as Chris mentioned, do some edits or tweaking if needed, if that's right, Chris.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Great. So let's talk about this for a minute. So again, we're focusing on onboarding today, and it's really great too because we're able to throw in. I noticed I loved the ability to put in things like descriptions. So why am I even doing this? Why am I jumping into the asset map workflow? And we really have found that, of course, fact finding and getting great information from your clients and prospects is super valuable. And another part that I love about this is for about 3 or 4 years now, we've had a really great Wealthbox integration. So not only can you use our direct-to-client fact finder, our discovery tool that I showed you for a minute there, you can also clean up some of that data by connecting over to Wealthbox, which is just super powerful to be able to do both. But again, having that insight about the asset map report built for that client by your client is just so invaluable when you're having a conversation. So that's what we've got going on here at a high level, but you'll see we have 9 steps that I have built out. And I kind of consulted with our customer support team too, who are speaking with advisors such as yourselves every day of the week, thinking about, what are the steps that would need to be taken to go ahead and make sure that you are fully prepared using the discovery process for that first meeting with your client. And also keep in mind that meeting that we keep referencing, that can be remote, that can be in person. It's really whatever modality you're comfortable with. One of the great things about Asset-Map that honestly, I think we were doing better than almost anybody for a long, long time now is you're going to get the same experience of the Asset-Map report, the Asset-Map, kind of experience overall on a Zoom screen, or if you're in the office, using a smart board with your client. We wanted it to be super seamless, no matter how you decide to meet with your clients, and have it be just as valuable for someone who's across the state than if someone who's just across the street. So that's also something to keep in mind as we're working through this. So let's get started. Let's talk about how this whole process goes as far as the workflow goes. So as I mentioned, you are going to be able to have your own custom discovery link that is always going to tie back to your Asset-Map account. So you can send it out and know that, if you were to log in the next day, you might have a great notification that says, oh, Chris and his spouse went ahead and they filled out their discovery link. You can go in and review it at that point. So how we're getting kicked off is, we're going to send them that discovery link. And this can be the same process, super repeatable, same link that you're going to send out, because they're going to go ahead and tell you more about themselves, and it will then create the asset map report. So again, prior to your meeting, you're going to want to, about a week in advance, send your client or prospect who's never been entered into asset map before this great discovery link, questionnaire, however you want to call it, so that they have a little bit of time to go in, take 10 or 15 minutes themselves, and again, give them a little more context about themselves and their family and financial life. So really the first step is send that discovery link out and allow them to open it up, check it out, and give you that information. Something else that I included here is we have a really cool custom marketing video that advisors can use to set the stage a little bit with clients. So, let them know what the experience is going to be. Give them, a quick 90-second video that can also be customized to you to walk them through exactly how this is going to be valuable for them, for their family, and also your relationship going forward. So that's something else to keep in mind is, send the link out. It's a very self-explanatory, but you also have the ability to say, you know what, check out this cool video too. It's going to give you what the experience will be like for you once we get going. So that's really the first step. Chris, is there anything you'd add there as we kind of get kicked off?
Yeah, so the one thing that I actually wanted to highlight about that first step is the fact that it is using a milestone. So you'll notice that the due date is 7 days before meeting date. So if you are copying and duplicating this exact workflow and you leave that step as is, basically as you start the workflow, you'll be asked, when is that meeting date? And the idea of this process is for it to start once you have that date set so that you can prepare everything kind of around that meeting date. So I think it's really beneficial to have that kind of be around that date. You might speak to a client that wants to meet a month from now. Another client might be away for a little bit, so they are not planning until 6 months from now, right? And we were just talking about that, Allison and I, with how busy our schedules are, right? So if someone reaches out and says, let's schedule something, I can't do that within a week or so. Typically, that's something I have to plan way ahead. So that milestone functionality, the fact that it specifically says 7 days before meeting date, is super helpful here.
I love that. And what a good point, because, as I was building the workflow, as easy as it was, and as much fun as I had doing it, I was thinking to myself, I kind of feel like I'm being presumptuous in saying that this is the right amount of time for, a particular financial professional or any subscriber that they should be doing these. And listen, we took our best guess on what makes sense. But as to Chris's point, you can think about your firm, your practice, your staff, and how booked out you are, and what kind of time you have, and just tweak based on what's necessary. So I really appreciate that you pointed that out, because I didn't want to assume too much, but you have to make those choices as you're building it out. So great point. So we are extremely lucky to basically know that we're getting, gosh, I think it's between 60 and 70% of discovery fact finders filled out without any reminders. So clients are loving this process. I don't know of any other kind of fact finding that has those kind of high results in having a client really buy into a process, maybe even before you meet with them at all. So we're getting great results, but there are a couple things that we build in. Certainly confirming that a client completed the fact finder is an important step in this process, and might actually be something where, we need to send reminders and things like that. So there are a couple different ways, and of course our team, if you decide to, get on board with Asset-Map, or you need help with this from our perspective, there are two ways that you can tell that a client has engaged in the fact-finding process. There's going to be a notification that you get right on your Asset-Map homepage when you log in. And you're also going to get an email reminder. And of course, that could go to a staff member as well. If you have someone in the office who's helping you manage these things, it's really nice to see that email come through, or that notification come through and say, Chris and his spouse have gone ahead and started the fact-finding process. That gets you excited that, just in a short period of time, you're going to be able to see, what's super relevant to them. So, next step in the process, of course, is, confirm that the client did complete the fact finder. Check your notifications, and, then you're moving forward. Chris, we are on to step number 3. And I think if you want to talk about outcomes for a minute, because I think you're definitely a bigger expert on that, if we need to send a reminder, talk a little bit about how, can kind of skip back to another step if needed.
Yeah, of course. And something that we'll notice within this workflow is that step 3 is a follow-up. And if you do get that email ahead of time, you never have to follow up. So those outcomes is essentially the outcomes are going to allow us to basically skip that step if we don't need to follow up, but it will allow us to prevent kind of this term that I'm sure a lot of folks that are on this call have heard me say before: workflow limbo. It's when a workflow stays active and you're there with the step that asks you to review the report, but you're waiting because the client didn't get back to you yet. So this keeps you on top of it. It makes sure that you stay responsible for getting that information ahead of time before the meeting. So what we have done is, in step 2, we have 2 outcomes that say that it was completed or not. And then in step 3, we basically say, how did that follow-up go? I spoke with them and they never even received the link. They checked their spam folder, it's not there. So let's resend it. That goes right back to step 1. If they answer the phone, they just said that I'll get to it, I've been busy, that just tells you to follow up again and confirm in about a day. And this makes sure that you're staying on top of your client, that you are reaching out, you're following up. And it's the outcomes that make sure that you're essentially looping within that step, and you consistently are following up with the client so that they know the type of advisor that you are, that you're able to kind of follow through with that. So that's outcomes. And of course, these are all customizable when you duplicate the workflow, but something that I find applied to most workflows is some sort of a loop, a follow-up loop that really helps out.
I love that, because then you're just gonna get stuck in the process, like you said,
Right.
and it's like, it kind of renders the rest of the workflow useless if you're not, staying on top of it and making sure the outcomes are what you expect. So I think that's a fabulous feature, and, thank you for explaining it better than I would have.
Of course.
Let's assume, hey, maybe it's a situation we all get busy, right? So you send out the discovery link, your client promises that they're going to get to it. They have the best of intentions, but there's nothing wrong with a friendly reminder because it keeps everyone on agenda, on task, and then they can jump in and especially if you kind of throw it out to them. Listen, this is not going to be a 45-minute, 2-hour process. You can really jump in and pretty quickly get some really valuable information to the advisor. All right. So we have gone ahead. We've sent the link. We've sent a friendly reminder if needed. We've received a notification that a client has gone ahead and created an asset map for you. And I have to imagine, and I know for a fact through friends that are using Asset Map that they love getting that notification and the ability to jump in and see exactly what this family has going on, so they can come up with a game plan in the firm of what that relationship's going to look like and how they can kick off with the meeting. So if we just even check out the description here, next up is review that asset map report. Go in, see exactly what they told you. There's even a section in the discovery link that'll say, what's on your mind? What do you want to talk about when you come in? So that's pretty cool too. Even those kind of soft questions that we all like, it's not super data driven, but something that's important to them and maybe even insight on why they booked a meeting with you in the first place is something that they can actually list out as well. So again, once you get that notification that your client or prospect has completed their discovery interview, which a good point here to note too is once they do it, they can't go back in and manipulate that data anymore. So it is kind of an initial one-time thing at this point for Asset Map for your clients to give that data to you. But again, now you're going to have insight into things like family makeup, financials, insurance products they might have. Potentially one of the most popular things we see at this point is those dreaded old 401ks that clients tend to leave at their old, place of employment. We've all done it. I've done it. And that's something that a lot of times comes up in the discovery interview, and you can walk through how to better handle those investments with them. But once they've completed some of that data, shown interest in your process, it sets the relationship off on the right foot. So it just, this is kind of your point in time where you can jump in yourself, a staff member, and see exactly what they're going on and prep for that meeting. All right. So you have now reviewed the asset map report. What if, they have told you a little bit about themselves, their spouse, they've said that they have a couple of kids that they would like to discuss education planning for. Wouldn't it be great if you can connect over to Wealthbox, which you sure can? And again, this is something where if you're an Asset Map subscriber or you're thinking about it, the team will absolutely help you get your integration set up. But clearly, we always say at Asset Map that the CRM is the gold standard of data. That's where you have the most accurate, up-to-date information about that particular family, from dates of birth to contact information, addresses. And that is something where the Wealthbox integration is going to make sure that everything you know about those folks is accurate and up to date. You can overlay the Wealthbox integration once the client has gone ahead and told you a little bit more about themselves, and make sure that you're not fumbling around for dates of birth for their 4 kids and all the things can just be time consuming. The Wealthbox integration will go ahead and do that for you. So I fully recommend getting that loaded up before the meeting as well. So we all know that if we look at something and it reflects us appropriately, it's going to, keep a client engaged. And I think that's really important. And that Wealthbox integration is going to do that for you. So we certainly recommend loading that up as well. All right, let's keep going. Now, someone even mentioned this. I've been kind of checking the Q&A a bit, thinking about what you folks are curious about. And someone mentioned stencils. Now, so you have, let's recap. Asset Map has been filled out by the client, and maybe it's a bit of a skeleton project, but you know more about them. You've loaded up Wealthbox, so now you have contact information that you can count on. We have something in Asset Map called stencils, and you want to think about stencils as, placeholders for important conversations. Maybe asset map boxes that would be something that a lot of peers of your clients might have. Maybe you work with business owners. Maybe you work with Gen X clients. Whatever kind of niche that you tend to focus on, you can have custom stencils built, almost similar to custom workflows, right, in Wealthbox, or you can use asset map stencils. And what it's going to do is, and again, I know you're not looking at it, but it's going to put those placeholder boxes right on the asset map report to basically remind you, hey, they do have this old 401k. Let's put a placeholder box on the asset map report for an IRA so we can talk about what that would look like if we were to roll it over from that old 401k. So it's going to save you time. It's going to build conversation pieces within the asset map. And then all you have to do is click on that box and update it and turn it into kind of a real life representation of what that client has. So stencils are really a great way to, again, put some placeholders in there, save you time from having to create all of the asset map boxes, and also, really give the client some conversation points and ideas on what folks like them might have based on, what kind of client they might be. So again, we'll walk you through it, but we love the ability to add stencils in to just make that kind of asset map build that much easier. So we definitely recommend that as well. Keeping in mind that all of these dates, so you'll still see the due dates, you'll see the contact owner, these are all going to keep you on track. So in this case, again, just to call out a due date from time to time, we want you to go ahead and check out adding a stencil a day after the previous step was completed. And again, that's all, tweakable, but, keeping you on track for that kind of week or so leading up to the meeting is really going to keep you and the team organized and make sure you're prepared for the meeting. Chris, anything to add as far as just like kind of the behind the scenes, steps and how it's all built, or are we good so far?
No, I think we're going through it as in depth as we need to. I think you really touched on those due dates, the excuse me, the one day after the previous step is completed. And that's an example of just a dynamic assignment. And you could kind of dance around that due date and find out when is it best to have that prepared. So I think you covered it really well.
Okay, great. Okay, moving right along. I'm sure you're all getting the point here. At this point, we always want to make sure expectations are set. So confirm meeting with the client. If you've learned anything new, maybe through that, discovery process, through the Wealthbox process. Maybe you added Wealthbox in and you noticed they've recently had a baby that you didn't know about, and they popped up with a date of birth for a family member. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can uncover during this process that might be really valuable for you to know before the meeting happens, and certainly thinking about those stencils. So go ahead and confirm the meeting with your client now that you're prepared. Reach out, make sure that, the time expectation is correct. Are you coming in for an hour? Do you have a little bit more time, a little bit less time? Is it a remote meeting? Is it an in-person? Am I going to their place of business? Just make sure you're all set for what's going to be happening coming up any time now, one day before the meeting date. And again, you can set that time frame. All right, we're here for the meeting. So, let's go ahead and talk to the client. One of the most kind of common ways still to get data points into Asset Map, in addition to our great integrations like we have with Wealthbox, the onboarding through our discovery process is just that collaboration. So, Chris and I are meeting, I'm the advisor, he's my client, and, we're talking through it together. And because it's so visual, Chris is able to really easily understand what's going on because we're not looking at 10 pages of reports. So it's really interesting to see how the conversation goes. Things are uncovered by the advisor, the client's getting better service. Everybody is just kind of taking it to the next level because of the visualization. A lot of those data points are added during that meeting process. So, as much as we love integrations, we have some amazing ones here at Asset Map. Almost nothing replaces that conversation, that interaction between you and the client during the meeting, where you're just going to find out so many important things about them. So I think it's interesting, and I don't know if everybody calls out stats in the description, but we do a lot of studies, as you can imagine, on visualization, and they're showing that only around 10% of people actually retain something. If I'm just talking to you instead of actually showing something as well. So 65%, if you're using visuals to support your conversation over, just about 10% of people who have to hear something and then it tends to go out the other ear, as we all know. So, and finally, in our ongoing workflow, keep your meetings going with your clients, ongoing asset map review. Set your next meeting if you want to. Come in and say, I'd love to revisit this with you in 6 months if possible, or, whatever cadence is appropriate for you and your team. Everybody has a different idea of the right amount of time to meet with clients or the amount of time in between. And every client's different. So you can come up with that time frame. But now that your client has experienced Asset Map in the meeting, they tend to want their own report. We always hear things like, this is something I've always wanted. I just didn't know how to ask for it. Or I can't wait to take this home to my spouse. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it to the meeting. And now I'm going to be able to share it with him. So giving them a printed Asset Map report is fantastic. But I'll tell you what, the timing of this webinar couldn't be better because I'm pretty sure as of, it might be today, I might be making an announcement I'm not supposed to be making, but we do have a brand new going live client portal. So the ability to share a digital version of the asset map with your client and spouse is now possible as well. So instead of just printing it out, handing it to them to take home, which of course they love, you can now, if it's up to you, of course, grant them the ability to log in and see their asset map digitally as well. And that's live basically as of today. So that might be a really nice kind of, final step is, hey, as a follow-up from the meeting, thank them, talk about, anything that really stuck out to you that might be worth, reiterating with the client, maybe in an email or a phone call, and get them logged in and loaded up with their own, a way to get into Asset Map in between meetings and see what's in there. So a really great way to end up with the follow-up.
Awesome. This is an amazing process. I would even add some things just based on those two final steps. And I wanted to kind of add some best practice thoughts for anyone that's going to be duplicating this and saving it as your own, but also from the perspective of why these are built the way that they are. So when we look at that step 8 of client meeting, that is typically where you want to make sure that your notes are added in the CRM. Make sure that you checked all of your boxes. So that is the step that you would basically modify to track exactly what you need to do as that meeting happens. What are the other things that you want to do? Maybe you want to send a quick thank you email. Maybe you want to make sure you add your notes. So that is where you would put that information. Then in that last step, step 9, I get this question pretty frequently of, can a workflow be repeating? Can you set up a workflow to be repeating? And technically speaking, you can add an outcome that restarts the workflow. However, because we're using milestones here and that meeting date is always going to be different. You'll say, let's meet in 6 months. It's way too early to set a date 6 months from now. So you set the expectation, you set up that task to remind yourself to call the client and schedule the meeting, and then you simply start the workflow again, set that new milestone date and go through that process again. So these steps are all very helpful, but there's a lot that we can modify here. There's a huge amount that that you as the advisor or you as the operations director in your firm, you're able to really mold this to make sure that it works for your current process. So that was amazing. Allison, thank you so much for speaking through all of those steps there. Now we'll go ahead and open up for our Q&A session.
Excellent.
So go ahead and take over the screen share here.
Do.
And there's a couple of questions that did come up throughout the presentations. So we'll start through those. I'm going to get through these in chronological order. So one of the first questions that did come in is whether the slides will be available after the webinar. There wasn't too many slides talking about Wealthbox itself. However, this presentation is being recorded and it will be available within a couple of days. It will automatically be sent to everyone that has signed up for this presentation. Now, Allison, a question came in for you as you were talking about what Asset Map is. And the question is, I'm sold on the idea. What are the price subscription levels? Need to know if this is even affordable. Can you speak to pricing a little bit?
Of course. Yeah. Well, I'm so happy you're excited. Yeah, we Asset Map I believe is a very affordable solution. We tend to hear that, one case or two, it covers it for the year. So I'm confident that you're going to make it valuable right basically from the start. We hear that a lot. But to answer your question, we do have a couple of different tiers. But to give you an idea, and of course, we have some partner discounts, we have some broker dealer discounts, we have a lot of things that could vary the price by a little bit. But we tend to range between $100 and $200 a month. If you like to pay annually, you get a bit of a discount. But to give you a quick idea, the system starts out right at $99 a month before discounts. That does strip out some of the planning functionality. And again, the sales team can walk you through what that looks like. Our most popular version is our professional version, which gives you all the features, all the integrations, of course, the discovery link that I talked about today. And then we have another version that comes in right under $200 a month. And that adds in some practice management things, some customizations, kind of matching up the discovery, that interview process I told you about, to match up with your team colors, your firm colors, your DBA. So there are some customizations that can come with it. And also at that level, we'll give you some discounts to training, some, more one-on-one support, things like that. So I consider us to be a very affordable solution when it comes to the value that you get. But let's call it, between 100 and 200 a month before discounts.
Awesome. Thank you. And another question here for you. This question came in as we were just looking at the actual workflow.
Mhm.
And the question was, can this be used to attract new clients? And
Oh,
that question, I was thinking about it from the perspective of, can a workflow be used to attract new clients, or that specific workflow? And I think by modifying it, we certainly can kind of shift it a little bit to be more prospecting focused. But in terms of the fact finder and in terms of any prospecting capabilities of kind of building out a map for a prospect, can you speak to that a little bit? Is that a possibility there?
listen, I might be biased. I am biased. I love Asset-Map, but when I tell you that there is no better prospecting technology out there, I firmly believe that we are at the top of the conversation because, if let's say, let's use an example of a client appreciation event or a prospecting meeting that you have locally, let's say, and you have 20 families that come, hear what you have to say. Maybe you put on some great informational topic at a lunch, and 10 of those folks are super excited to potentially work with you as their advisor. If I'm the advisor in that situation, I'm sending the discovery link to every single one of those families and saying, I would love to meet with you in just a couple weeks. Tell me a little bit more about yourself. Kick off the Wealthbox workflow. And yes, I would be using this for prospecting 100% of the time. We have a lot of really cool webinars on how to do that. I just did a webinar with White Glove, another technology out there, just a couple of months back. And it was literally all about prospecting with White Glove and then converting with Asset-Map. Really, really fun one. So yes, I think we're a perfect fit if you are actively looking to prospect for new clients.
Yeah, that certainly does make sense. I could see the value in that just myself. If I was to receive that from an advisor, I think that would definitely help sell sell the
Yeah.
advisor services for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Another question here: can you link Asset Map to Wealthbox through application? So I think this is more of a technical question of where the integration is enabled. It's not something that you'll see within the application section of Wealthbox, and this is something that Allison touched on briefly earlier, where the Asset Map team can actually help you set that up. So it is something that's enabled within Asset Map. But just for the remainder of our Q&A session here, I'll actually pull up these follow-up contacts here. So if you wanted to get in touch with the Asset Map team and get that set up, you can contact the Asset Map team over at hello@asset-map.com. And if you have any questions on the Wealthbox side, sales@wealthbox.com. And I'll just leave this up for the remainder of the presentation for anyone that might need to drop. So hopefully that answers that question. Another question for you here, Allison. With stencils and the Riskalyze option, will that populate on the asset map? I'm not sure if it's referring to nitrogen Riskalyze or if there's a risk analysis side of it.
Oh, no, it's definitely referring to nitrogen. So, we as an entire industry are still getting used to calling riskalized nitrogen, I think. They are very good friends, both Wealthbox and Asset-Map friends. And yes, we have a great integration with them as well. It's one that really actually loads on nicely on top of a Wealthbox integration.
Right.
So you could get started with Wealthbox integration and Asset-Map, get all that important contact information in there, and then load in the nitrogen integration, which is going to give you lots of investment values, anything that lives from a financial standpoint in nitrogen could be loaded into Asset Map, update those values pretty easily, anything under your management or anything the client has put in, and also give you that really great speed sign risk score right on the Asset Map report. Can you use that in conjunction with stencils? Absolutely. So, you can layer on a lot of features of Asset Map and really make them work for you. So I think I answered that correctly, but if you need anything, I'm going to put my email address in the chat here in a second too. But reach out to our team. Our customer support team is fantastic, and we will help you figure out, kind of the best use case for you. But the answer is yes, overall to your question. And we love our friends over at Nitrogen, and that's also a great integration for us.
Perfect. Thank you. So we actually don't have a chat feature enabled for this presentation.
Oh,
Would the
okay.
better way just to be hello@assetmap.com
Yes,
and
or you can swap out the beginning, allison.susko@asset-map.com. But yes,
perfect.
help get to the right folks as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Another question that came up here, just speaking of integrations,
Oh.
does Asset Map integrate with Money Guide Pro, or is it more of a replacement for Money Guide Pro? How's that live?
Great question. We do have an integration with Money Guide Pro. So if use case there is if you have, you've a longtime Money Guide Pro subscriber, you have a lot of great data in there that you don't necessarily want to rekey back into Asset Map. Maybe you have a fully built out household or multiple households in MGP. You could absolutely port them over into Asset Map and use us kind of as more of the presentation layer, more of that visualization for the meeting in conjunction with Money Guide. So yes, we have a very cool integration with them, and it's going to push what you already have existing in Money Guide right into Asset Map, so you can use that in your client meetings.
Awesome. Perfect. Another question for you here. Does Asset Map offer a cash flow report to present to clients?
We do have a cash flow report. So I guess it's probably about 2 or 3 years old. I don't remember the date, but within what we call our target maps, and target maps are our kind of needs-based analysis planning tools. So quick spot-based planning. It's not going to go into depth, like if we're talking about a Money Guide Pro, it's not going to go quite as deep with, model portfolios, asset allocation, super in-depth planning like our friends at MGP do. But we are going to be able to say, hey, are you on track for saving for retirement? If you want to save for education purposes for your kids, here's what you need to think about based on, current expenses and inflation and how much your investments are, getting as far as rates of return. So within that planning functionality that we have in Asset Map, we have built in a cash flow so you can get a little bit more detailed with, the spend down throughout the years. So the answer is yes. And that lives in our target map
Perfect.
of the application.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, going back to a feature that you had talked about is that client portal.
Yeah.
We actually got some feedback here that it is live and it's great. Emily showed it to me recently. Matt mentioned in the Q&A, so I think we're good there. And I did see another question related to that. Where do I find the new client sharing feature? Do you know where maybe someone
The
could
new
learn
client
more?
portal?
I believe so. The question specifically says new client sharing feature, and I think
Oh,
that's
yeah, yeah.
referring to
Client
the
sharing.
digital. Yeah.
I love that they referenced it with the right name. Client sharing is what we're calling it. So right within your household index. So for those of you who are Asset Map subscribers, when you log in and you go to see all of your households, you're able to click on a household, go into kind of their details for that household and load it up there. I'm trying to think of the best way to, because I'm not logged in. But within the household itself, you go to your household, you go into the details for that particular household, and then right in there, you're able to launch it for them. I would say, I wonder how I can get this to you. I will find a way in follow up to make sure that you folks know how to turn it on. It's very, very easy. And of course, you can ask our team, but it is within that household. In each individual household, there's no kind of total turn on feature. We want to make sure it's up to you who you're giving access to. So we don't want to make any assumptions. So go into that individual household and the details, and I think you'll be able to find it there. If not, give us a ring
Perfect.
or shoot us an email.
Awesome. Sounds simple enough.
It is.
All right. And I know we were talking about this over the last couple of days as we were working on this workflow together. A question came up. Are there any plans to create a workflow for ongoing asset map reviews? Allison, do you know what's in the stars for any additional workflows that your team might want to build?
Are we allowed to build more workflows?
You certainly can. We could
Well,
take
then,
this
yeah.
offline, Allison. We can talk about a separate presentation for more. But just know that Allison is excited to build more, so it's a probably yes. Uh,
Listen, if you all have a suggestion that would be just a killer asset map workflow in Wealthbox, and the Wealthbox team is open to it, consider us game. I mean, we
awesome.
love to make things as seamless as possible for our subscribers and our advisor friends. So yeah, throw us some feedback, and if you have ideas for new workflows, we are absolutely game to do it.
Perfect. Awesome. So just a couple more questions here. One specific to Wealthbox. Are you able to have workflows create tasks? And the simple answer to that question is no. However, a workflow consists of workflow steps, and workflow steps are almost exactly like tasks. Not only is it similar, but within your tasks section on the left and on your homepage within a tasks component, you can actually have that feature show you workflow steps as well. So they'll literally be side by side. You wouldn't be able to tell a difference, but instead of it creating a whole separate activity, it's a step that exists within the workflow that just shows up as a reminder, just like your tasks do. So hopefully that answers your question there. Another question here, specific to Wealthbox, any best practices on connecting opportunities and workflows since they aren't directly linked now, and are there plans to look at this, doing this in the future? So they are currently linked. You can actually create workflows specific to opportunities. As you're creating a workflow or even duplicating one that's like that's just like the asset map one, you have the ability to switch who you want it to be for or what you want it to be for. The options are contact, opportunities, or projects. Then when you open the opportunity, click on the name again, and you can actually start a workflow right there. So you do have the ability to do that. Keep in mind, if there's a step that asks you to call the client, you would have to click into the opportunity and then the client to find the contact info. So from my perspective, I always advise leaving everything in the contact record, but you certainly can relate those to opportunities if you truly want that process to live in there. And feel free to reach out if you have any other questions on that. If you weren't able to find it before, definitely reach out. And looks like the last question for today, do you, both Wealthbox and Asset Map, have integrations with On-Point Risk Analyzer? On the Wealthbox side, we don't have anything currently. The name sounds familiar. I know it's come up in the past, but we're always very aggressively integrating with different partners. So that's not a no forever, but a no right now. But definitely look out for any updates on that. Allison, do you know of any integrations on the Asset Map side?
Ditto to your answer. We love to hear about opportunities for future integrations. We're working on some really cool ones for 2024. Just keep your eyes and ears open for what we've got coming. But no, we do not have one with them now, but I'm certainly going to give them a peek and see what they're all about. So thank you for the suggestion.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely excited to see what Asset Map has in the pipeline for that. All right, perfect. And okay, and looks like Scott shared a point of contact for OnPoint. So this is all going to come out in a report that Allison's team as well as the Wealthbox team will be able to look at and reach out if needed. But I'd like to thank everyone for joining us here today and participating in the Q&A. I hope you all kind of learned some more, even more about workflows, and that you all will jump right into those templates and duplicate that asset map template, because it truly is very useful and very efficient. So thank you all so much for joining us. And Allison, thank you so much. It's been great working with you on building this workflow. It's been a lot of fun. I'm excited to build more with you. To the person that asked that question, just know that we are very excited to be doing this.
Yeah,
But
it's
Allison, thank you
amazing.
so much.
Thank you so much for having us. And yeah,
Of
reach out if
course.
you have any questions. And thank you to the Wealthbox team for hosting.
Of course, it's our pleasure. Again, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take
See you.
care. Bye.